For most competitive Pokemon players, it was either the games or the anime that got them into playing competitively, and since I've been rewatching the anime recently, I wanted to know just how realistic the anime battles are, so I'll be analyzing them through a competitive lens. I'm going to assume they're all level 100 and that they don't have any items unless specifically stated in the anime, and I'm going to do my best to give them the natures that best make sense for their sets, which given how insane some of these sets are, can be kind of difficult. Basically, I'll be doing a brief overview of each battle and then showing the damage calc, plus correcting all the quote-unquote anime logic in the battle. The first round is Pikachu versus Tyranitar. This is a very short match. So, Tyranitar starts out with Sandstream. He then uses Dark Pulse and Pikachu dodges it. Then it's Iron Tail in the water because quote-unquote Ash thinks it'll make Sandstream disappear. He then uses Thunderbolt, and it's Electro Ball versus Stone Edge. They both run into each other and I interpret that as a miss. Then it's Crunch versus Iron Tail, and then one Electro Ball and Tyranitar dies. Pikachu is a fairly unimpressive Pokemon with a low base stat total of 320. However, there is a variant of Pikachu which is the Partner Pikachu that has better stats. Not great stats, it's still Pikachu. However, in Showdown, that variant of Pikachu has the same base stats. So we're gonna have to take Showdown's word for it. Even after holding a Light Ball, Pikachu is still very unimpressive. Versus Tyranitar, who needs no introduction, he is a bulky Pokemon with 600 base stat total. He is capable of being a special attacker, although he has a very impressive 134 physical attack stat, and overall, there is no reason why he shouldn't absolutely dominate Pikachu. So now to analyze the battle. Tyranitar does have mixed attacking capabilities. Specifically in the early generations of Gen 3, 4, and even 5, he would run moves like Fire Blast and Ice Beam, but that's the thing, not to Dark Pulse, because he has access to Crunch, which makes more sense since he can use his physical attack stat. And he does run Crunch. There's no need to run 2 Dark-type moves. What are you doing, Alon? But the most egregious part of this is that Pikachu dodges it, but Dark Pulse is 100% accurate. It has a higher chance of flinching Pikachu than missing, so that's just not possible. Then Pikachu uses Thunderbolt. That's realistic enough in the sense that it hits for neutral damage. That would have done 11.8 to 14.1% damage though. Very little because it's his best stat move, yeah, but it's still just Pikachu. Then the part where they throw a Stone Edge and Electro Ball, and they both explode onto each other. There's no way to interpret that through a competitive lens really, it's just anime logic, and because of that, I'm not going to mention those type of things in the rest of the video. There's just no way to interpret it, it's kind of useless. I just wanted to make sure you knew I'm not ignoring it. It's just that there's not much to say, because they don't take damage from it. Overall, that match is pretty unrealistic. However, Pikachu could have actually won if he used Iron Tail on Tyranitar instead of Electro Ball. Even though he does finish him off with Electro Ball only does 8 to 9.4% damage. That's nothing. This would have been over in one turn realistically, since one Crunch from Tyranitar can OHKO a Pikachu. So although in the anime this round went to Ash, this round goes to Alon. Next, Weavile versus Noivern, which is a great choice for Alon because Weavile is a great matchup against him, being an Ice type versus Dragon Flying type. So, Weavile protects right off the bat, then uses Night Slash, and that hits, and he uses Supersonic, which hits again. But we're gonna come back to Supersonic later. Weavile uses Ice Beam versus Boom Burst, and they both explode onto each other. Noivern uses Dragon Claw, Weavile uses Double Team. He uses Supersonic to find the real one, which isn't how Supersonic works. Weavile dodges the Dragon Claw and uses Ice Beam, and that hits. Noivern then falls, and then he's killed by a Night Slash. Noivern dies. Weavile can be a terrifying late-game sweeper with great offensive typing, with priority moves like Ice Shard and Sucker Punch as well. It's honestly a min-max Pokemon for competitive play, being a fast physical attacker. And Noivern is a seriously underwhelming Pokemon, has 1 high stats, and it's his speed being at 123. However, while that's impressive, it's literally so frail, and both his attack stats are really unimpressive. So he's not going to be dealing that much damage. Here's the thing, Weavile is not a special attacker, and Ice Beam is a special move. At a super low 45, his lowest stat actually, never has Weavile ever in the history of Pokemon run a special move. So I had to basically make a set that was specific just for this version of Weavile. I chose a Rash Nature to maximize damage. It came out with Ice Beam doing 86.1 to 104.1% damage, because even though that's a very low attack stat, it can OHKO Noivern since he's frail and again, 4 times weakness. Other than that, even if it didn't KO him, Night Slash could definitely finish him off, since it does do 46.6 to 55.3% damage. And that's the thing, Supersonic in the anime is seen as a damaging move, akin to Boom Burst. But in reality, Supersonic is a move that confuses your opponent. Weavile doesn't look confused at all. So the way it functions in the anime would just not be how it functions in real life if you were to use it in an actual competitive game. This is probably one of the worst matchups Ash ever used, because the only move that he actually used that could have made damage towards Weavile is a Dragon Claw, and his physical attack stat is super low. So Alon wins this one. This match was technically realistic. Even though how the moves are used aren't, the outcome does make sense. Next is Hawlucha versus Weavile. So at this point, Weavile hasn't actually taken any hits because Supersonic is not a damaging move, and he dodged the Dragon Claw. Hawlucha uses Karate Chop, and Weavile dodges. Weavile uses Ice Beam at the ground, as if Hawlucha can't fly. But Hawlucha doesn't fly away, because Ash tells him to tank the Ice Beam and the Night Slash, which is anime logic at its finest. He says that the Ice Beam will reduce any damage, apparently. He tanks another Night Slash, and Hawlucha uses Flying Press on Weavile, making Weavile faint. So at this point, like I said, Weavile hasn't taken any hits. So Karate Chop has a 100% accuracy rate, so it can't miss. Weavile wouldn't actually be able to dodge it. But he did use Double Team earlier, so this technically actually holds up due to it raising his evasion. But here's where it gets interesting. Hawlucha tanks an Ice Beam, which would do 56 to 66% damage, and then a Night Slash that would do 34 towards 40.3% damage. So the only way he could survive it is if Weavile hit the lower end of both rolls, leaving him with only about 10% HP. But then he tanks another Night Slash. Even if he gets a really low roll at 34% damage, he is absolutely dead. But the anime lets him finish the match with a Flying Press. Now, to be fair, a Flying Press would OHKO Weavile since he has a 4x weakness to fighting because of his Dark Ice typing. But Hawlucha would not be able to survive this even with defensive investment. Even though in the anime Ash wins this round, realistically, Alon wins again, making Alon be 3-0 with Ash. Next is Bisharp versus Hawlucha. Bisharp is a mixed attacker in the anime, which no one actually runs in real life. But I chose a naughty nature so he could use his special moves without too much downside. Bisharp uses Thunder Wave on Hawlucha at first, and it's shown to take damage, which normally it shouldn't. I'll go on about why later. Bisharp then uses Guillotine versus Hawlucha's X Scissors, and they both land on each other. Bisharp then dodges a high jump kick from Hawlucha, and Bisharp finishes him off with a Guillotine. Like I said, Thunder Wave is not a damaging move. It just paralyzes and halves your speed. But in the anime, it seems to be a damaging move. So not only is Hawlucha already dead, but he's also crippled, so that's fun. This must be some immortal version of Hawlucha that I just don't know about. Hawlucha hits Bisharp with an X Scissor, which should do 25 to 29.8% damage. Not a lot, but not too shabby. And here's the thing, Guillotine lands on Hawlucha. Guillotine is not a move that is normally legal in competitive singles because it's an OHKO move, and it lands. Hawlucha should be dead again, but instead he just keeps going, and then he misses a high jump kick. See, in real life, high jump kick is a move which if you miss, you lose 50% of your HP. So again, he should not be alive. And then finally, Bisharp lands a Guillotine to end it. Again, OHKO move. This actually does make Hawlucha die though, and he faints. So yeah, Hawlucha fainting is realistic, but it took way too long. This match shouldn't even have happened in the first place. Alon wins again. This means Alon is up 4-0 with Ash. Then it's Unfezant versus Talonflame. It starts off pretty simple. They both use Steel Wing, Talonflame uses Flame Charge. Then Unfezant uses Air Slash, Talonflame uses Flare Charge again, and it's Unfezant's Sky Attack versus Hawlucha's Flame Charge again. So, I'm gonna do a little rundown of who these Pokemons are. Unfezant is a very, very unimpressive Pokemon. It's the early route regional bird of the Univert region. It doesn't particularly have any stat that is too good, and even the stats that do kind of stand out, it can't really use because in every other sense of the word, it is so, not even mid, it's just really bad. The only way that it can survive a hit is usually via a Focus Sash, unless the move is really low base power, which we'll see later. Talonflame, however, is probably the best regional bird to come to date, with the exception of maybe Corviknight. And at this point, because it's Generation 6, Talonflame hasn't been nerfed yet. He has an amazing ability in Gale Winds, and great coverage, plus great typing. There is no possible reason that Unfezant should win this unless Ash makes some very, very stupid decisions with Talonflame. They both start out by using Steel Wing. Unfezant Steel Wing should do 17.1 to 20.2% damage. Talonflame's should do 24.5 to 29.2. Talonflame's Flame Charge does 26.2 to 31.2 and raises his speed. That's his secondary effective Flame Charge. But here's where it gets interesting. Unfezant uses Sky Attack. Sky Attack is a move which normally takes 2 turns to actually put in effect, but in the anime, it kind of works as an instant move. Talonflame then uses Flame Charge again, the total damage from Flame Charge and Steel Wing should do around 84.25% damage. So at this point I thought, well, there's no way that Unfezant is going to manage to kill with just one Sky Attack. But Sky Attack is a base 140 base power move, and because it's stab, it actually does do a good amount. So Sky Attack does 102.3 to 120.5, so it does KO Talonflame. I guess I have to apologize, Unfezant, I was not familiar with your game. The funny thing about this is that if Ash used a better move, he could have 100% finished up Unfezant, because Unfezant was already on the verge of death and is not a bulky Pokemon. However, in the anime, it actually finishes by a double KO, which is not possible. Talonflame should have fainted first, but Alan wins again in reality. At this point, it is 5-0. Then it's Pikachu versus Metagross, the most egregious of these matches. So it starts out pretty simple. Metagross uses Agility, Pikachu uses Thunderbolt, however, it misses. Thunderbolt has 100% accuracy. It should not be able to miss. Metagross then uses Rock Slide and Meteor Mash. Pikachu uses Electro Ball, Thunderbolt, and Iron Tail. Metagross dies. So, Thunderbolt should do 22.9 to 27.2% damage. The second Thunderbolt misses. Again, not possible. It is a 100% accuracy move, and Metagross has not raised his evasiveness. In the anime, Agility seems to work similarly to Double Team. In reality, the way Agility works is that it raises your speed, and you can kind of see that in the anime, but I guess that it may also have the effect of raising your evasiveness as well. It's kind of weird, but again, it's anime logic. And I might as well just talk about Double Team right off the bat. Double Team, in reality, raises your evasiveness. But in the anime, it seems to kind of work in the same way that Naruto's Shadow Clone Jutsu works, and by that I mean that it makes a whole bunch of clones of yourself. I was going to be really nerdy about it and be like, this actually isn't how it works, but I guess you can chalk this up to the fact that raising your evasiveness could be kind of difficult to represent artistically, so I'll give it a pass. Anyways, he then uses Rock Slide on Pikachu, which should do 81.9 to 96.6% damage, and then a Meteor Mash, which should do 73.4 to 86.7% damage. Pikachu is dead. It has done far more than 100% of his HP. Even a bulky Pikachu with defensive investment cannot survive this. That's more than enough to KO him, but it doesn't. Pikachu wins by spamming more attacks, Electro Ball, Thunderbolt, and Iron Tail. And here's the thing, even if we combine all of these attacks and assume that he got the max roll on all of them, it only adds up to 83.5% of Metagross's HP. Not enough to KO him. So, even though Ash won this round in the anime, in reality, Alon should have won 100%. Then it's Charizard versus Pikachu. So, it's pretty simple. He uses Quick Attack, then Thunderbolt on Charizard, which hasn't Mega Evolved into Mega Charizard X at this point. Charizard then uses Flamethrower 2 times, and then it's an Iron Tail versus Dragon Claw, which makes Pikachu faint. The Quick Attack that was landed should do 13.1 to 15.4% damage. Then a Thunderbolt right after to do 49.1 to 58.5% damage. At this point, even if he got very low rolls, Charizard should actually be weakened. But the thing is that it only actually takes one Flamethrower for Pikachu to faint, because one Flamethrower there's 104.2 to 123.6% damage. We didn't actually need those 2 Flamethrowers. On top of that, Pikachu gets hit by a Dragon Claw, which is 62.5 to 73.9% damage. Pikachu should be dead. He is definitely the weakest link by far. So this one is actually realistic. Alan wins this one. Pikachu should not be on your team, Ash. I know you like him, but just at least evolve him, please. Next is Goodra versus Bisharp. Goodra starts out with Rain Dance, which is funny because Goodra doesn't actually carry any water type attacks, and Ash's team doesn't actually get to benefit from Rain Dance, as you'll see later. Bisharp actually manages to land practically 2 Iron Hands back to back, which each do 50 to 59.3% damage. Even if you're doing the most conservative estimate of it only doing 50% damage, that should obviously add up to Goodra dying. It has not even been 4 turns yet, and Goodra has already died. It should end here. But in the anime, for reasons that I just don't understand, it doesn't faint. Because again, he uses Bide, which the anime treats as like a get-out-of-free jail card for fainting. To top it off though, Bisharp uses Guillotine, and it cuts through Dragon Pulse. And that's when Goodra faints. And that part does make sense because it's an OHKO move. So yeah, Goodra fainting is realistic, but damn, it took longer than it should have. Alon wins. Weirdly enough, this is probably the most realistic battle in the anime though. Next is Bisharp versus Greninja. Probably the fastest out of all of these matches. Bisharp uses Iron Head, but Greninja uses Double Team. Greninja then uses Water Shuriken once, which normally hits 2 to 5 times, but this only hits once, and it does 8.6 to 10.6% damage. probably because he hasn't actually activated the Battle Bond ability yet. Then Bisharp faints instantly, so Ash wins. He shouldn't have won yet. There's no way that I can interpret this battle on like who should have won because it was so short, but knowing Ash, he would have probably found some way to mess this battle up too. So I feel like Alon should have won as well. Especially because, as we'll see later on, Greninja has no good coverage moves, and has nothing against Bisharp that's super effective. In fact, most of the moves that he has against Bisharp are not very effective because he carries lots of normal type moves for some reason. Then it's the battle we've all been waiting for. Charizard X versus Ash-Greninja. He starts out with the Flamethrower, and Greninja dodges it and uses Cut. Cut should do 18.8 to 22.2% damage. Then the rain clears. See, that's the thing. Ash-Greninja could have benefited from using Water Shuriken while Rain was active, but for some reason Ash is like, no, we're going to use a very low base power normal type move. So I guess Greninja is the HM slave of this generation. Then Battle Bond activates, and Charizard manages to Mega Evolve. Then Dragon Claw hits Ash-Greninja. It does 31.5 to 37.1% damage. This makes sense. Charizard X in the anime is a mixed attacker, but in reality he has a pretty high physical attack stat. He could have used a better move on Ash-Greninja, but it's good enough. Then Ash-Greninja uses Aerial Ace, which Greninja can't learn, and it does 22.2 to 26.2% damage. Charizard then gets hit by 2 Water Shurikens, which do 86.1 to 102.3% damage. This is where the battle should have ended. Charizard X cannot take that much. There is no reason Ash-Greninja should have won. So that's it, right? In the anime, Ash becomes the champion of the Kalos region, right? No. At this point, Charizard actually, who's already weakened from fighting Pikachu, should be gone, because Pikachu at this point used a super effective Thunderbolt on him. But nope, he decided to use Thunder Punch, which would have OHKO'd Ash-Greninja, but he saved it to the very end. The way that Charizard X actually wins this battle is by using Blast Burn, which is a very high base power fire type attack. And you might be thinking, well, it's a fire type attack and Ash-Greninja is a water type. Well, the thing is that Ash-Greninja is a very frail Pokemon, strong but frail, so this would have actually taken him out. But it doesn't matter because at this point, he already took 2 super effective Water Shurikens. Charizard X should be over. But in the anime, of course he wins. Kind of absurd. In conclusion, Alan wins every battle realistically. Ash only wins the very last one, and it's the one that mattered the most. So actually, Ken Sugimori, let Ash be the Kalos League champion, please. As a kid, I always wanted Ash to win, and I thought that if I actually took a chance and did all the calcs, I would have come to the conclusion that Ash should have won the battle. But no, Ash, as always, just keeps on disappointing me. To be honest, Ash had a chance of winning if he didn't make his Greninja NHM slave, gave better coverage to his Pokemon, and didn't spend so much time telling Pikachu to use Iron Tail on the ground.